Identerati Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue. Today is episode 182. Quick logistics reminder, please follow us on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you watch this. The topic today is SAML versus OpenID Connect versus OAuth. Our guest today is Mark Dobrinick, software developer at Curity and one-time maintainer of the Simba SAML proxy. Welcome, Mark.
Good of you to remind me of that. No, it's very nice to be here. So I thought a little bit about myself. My background is really information security. I started out very early on with working with smart cards and using cryptography, something that is just real cool. At least I think it's really cool and interesting. I started out using smart cards for doing authentication. This is in the end of the 90s, so that's like 30 years ago, maybe. From there, I pretty much moved into the identity space, working with identities in education. And this is really interesting area because this is where you hit the federations, and federations, they
So
take identity.
right?
That was for SurfNet, yes. SurfNet is in the Netherlands, is for higher education, and there's also Kennisnet, which is like a sister organization, which is for the younger schools, the middle schools. But they all use SAML and SAML federations, and this is where I have been learning a lot about actually using and doing SAML. Then along came like OpenID and OAuth, which are kind of solving the same problems that SAML does. At least there's a huge amount of overlap. Let's summarize it like that without going ahead too quickly. I ended up meeting some other people with the same passion and joined Curity, a company that is actually making a software product to solve OpenID Connect, OAuth, and guess what? More and more SAML still coming in and working more and more on SAML. But it's like a dinosaur technology, more than 25 years old, but it's still alive and kicking. So thank you, Mike, for having me and talk about this stuff.
All right, I have more questions prepared for this episode than any other, and they're all actually decent questions, and we're probably only going to get to five or six of them. So you sort of like raised the issue a little bit, but at a high level, what's the difference between SAML and OpenID Connect? I just want to get these out of the way because the title is SAML versus OpenID. So in just maybe in a nutshell, just what is the difference?
I can actually almost summarize it in two acronyms: XML and JSON. And I think this is at the core is what for me at least is the main difference. Another real difference when you're a developer is that SAML has been standardized for, I think that SAML 2 is from 2005, right? So that's 21 years old, and in 21 years time, some profiles and some minor errata have been added to the standard, but that's it. So it has been super stable. Whereas OpenID, OAuth, they are alive, very much so. They're still looking at the SAML spec to see what features they're missing, and they pick out some things that SAML has defined 25 years ago and now present them as new, built on top of the JSON stack. But yeah, I think that's actually the biggest difference. They solve the same problems. So yeah.
Yeah. I'll take a stab at this one, and I'm going to answer my own question.
Sure.
I mean, that's definitely where I would have started. That XML and JSON that was just too unwieldy, and too insecure. We always are fixing CVEs at Glue. We release our software, there are CVEs, and I check to see what the CVEs are about. And I feel like half the time they're about SAML or XML.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And when I say that the standard is stable, that also means that many of the libraries that people use, they're also quite stable. So they're not very actively developed. So every now and then, yeah, you are definitely hitting CVEs of libraries that are more than 10 years old. They're not maintained, which is like you point out correctly. It can be a security issue if you don't know exactly what you're doing and how to work with things. And this is something that if it's your daily work, daily task, then yeah, you're on top of things. You know how to deal and how to address them. But if this is not the thing that you work on daily, then it can be difficult to do things right. And XML is just a whole lot more overwhelming than JSON is. On the other hand, XML, by being so strict and by being so tight, strongly tight, it should also help, but it just takes some more time and some more effort to do everything right. Maybe that's also the thing.
You know, I feel like there's been actually it's like an underlying XML parser that's using some weird feature, like, you know, words inside the XML, and there are parser issues, and that it's just really hard to parse XML. And the other issue that I remember talking to John Bradley about this, and he said canonicalization of XML also starts to get really difficult. And I believe that in OpenID Connect, they don't do canonicalization. And that, but the canonicalization part also tends to be very hard to implement in software.
Well, how I look at these things is mostly that either you write your own XML parser and implement all the XML stuff yourself, which you probably don't and you probably shouldn't. So what you should be using is tried and proven libraries or third parties that provide you with the stuff that you need. But yeah, it's you have to make the right choices, and then the CVE stories, they keep on coming in because the more dependencies that you have on things, the more vulnerable you are to creative attacks. That's how it is in software. Although many times the CVE is about some specific library feature that in the end you're not using or not relying on anyway. So it is not always that much of a problem, but it does need your attention every time you see one. That's for sure.
You know, at Glue we use the Shibboleth IDP as our IDP component. And I found that over the years, when there are SAML or XML like CVEs or vulnerabilities, that it's the Shibboleth team that actually is the fastest to patch them, and really has consistently been excellent for a number of years. So my question is okay, Java libraries. What Security's approach on which Java SAML libraries to use or underlying XML libraries? Do you have any opinions there about it?
Yeah, I have some opinions. So I can be very practical on this question as well, because I have been using OpenSAML before joining Curity, which is the stuff coming from the Shibboleth guys. I've been using that also with Asimba, with the open source project that you mentioned in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. A one-time component of Glue.
Exactly. Exactly. Got you into federation space.
Yeah.
No, but when joining Curity, we were pretty much a startup that wanted to focus on the modern technologies, and we focused on OAuth and OpenID Connect, and we did SAML on the side. We made some deliberate choice to not become a full-on SAML product, because then we would face competition that we didn't feel like having. We had limited resources, so we decided to spend most resources on our own development of OpenID and OAuth stuff, and then we used some open SAML stuff on the side to do the basic SAML problem solving that we were seeing with our customers. Mm-hmm. We stuck to a version of OpenSAML. I think it was version 2 or 3. I'm not entirely sure, but it stopped being maintained. At some point, we were really fed up with all the CVE stuff that you mentioned because it was libraries of no longer supported version and then transitive dependencies of that, which are also no longer supported. So it became kind of a mess to look into things. Although we didn't use lots of the features that were vulnerable, we still it still took our attention. So at some point we bit the bullet and we saw that the customers really did keep on liking SAML more than we would expected them to be, because after all, it is quite an old technology. So what we actually did, what I actually did was I built my own library pretty much to do the SAML stuff. And one of the big advantages for us, at least, is that we could do away with most of all the dependencies that we didn't like. So what we end up with are dependencies to do some basic XML processing, to do the signing, to do the parsing. But other than that, the whole SAML layer on top of that, we build it ourselves. And the reason why we did that is that we think that we know our stuff, so it's justified, and we can be lean and mean in what we need to ship. So that's at least what we've been doing, or how we've been approaching it.
Interesting. So, okay, well, I want to actually zoom out a little bit and say, okay, so we've been talking mostly about like the transport layer and the encoding, right? But
Right.
Functionally, is SAML and OpenID pretty much doing the same thing?
I would say yes. They solve in essence they solve the problem of remote authentication or delegated authentication. I'm not talking OAuth here because OAuth is more limited than we're talking OpenID Connect, which actually adds the identity layer on top of OAuth, something that we talked about or that is mentioned very often. But basically, what it comes down is that I like to compare things with SAML a lot. So OpenID Connect adds the authentication context to OAuth. And if you look into the specs, you see exactly what I'm referring to. It is how does the user authenticate and the information around that. Yeah.
And you know, I think the important analogy to draw is that a SAML assertion and an ID token are roughly the same things. They are both records of an authentication event. And one's in XML and one's in JSON, but they both tell you what type of authentication happened, who's the subject of the authentication, how long is this assertion good for, you know, maybe other details about the authentication, the ACR. And then optionally might have attributes.
Yes. Yes.
Or user claims, I should say. User claims in OpenID Connect jargon and attributes in SAML jargon.
Yes.
And that kind of like leads into my next question, which is that, you know, how much of the complexity of SAML is just the fact that when the SAML specs, they're using all the wrong terminology.
Well, you're right. It's all in the eye of the beholder, right? No, it's SAML terminology is quite intimidating. I totally agree with that. So this is also something that OpenID it started from scratch. It started just making things, trying at least to make things a little bit more easy. But the thing is that when you start with nothing and you have like a simple problem space and you try to describe it in a simple way, you get away with it. It definitely works. It makes it better understandable. But once a technology sticks and it's being used for more and more purposes, then ultimately you will need a more nuanced terminology, and then you will grow towards the choices that SAML made to name things. Relying party or service provider. Come on, it's like for people who are not into this stuff on a daily basis. Try to explain the difference to these people, because in standard simple deployments, they're always pointing to the same system that you're using with, or that you're referring to. But there are so many nuances to it. I remember when I saw UMA first, like a user managed access standard, which was based on top of OAuth and OpenID Connect a little bit. But that also took the OAuth and OpenID language to be more nuanced, to be more strict, and to pull roles apart more, to make it more obvious what responsibility belongs to which entity. So SAML has a steep learning curve. I totally give you that. I will never deny that. But once you're there, you can quite comfortably look at OpenID Connect and put everything exactly in the right spot, because OpenID Connect is, with all its added profiles, with all its new features, and with all the new standards specifications being added on top of it, it's just filling in the blanks that that SAML has already specified 25 years ago, but now they turn out to be valuable for OpenID Connect as well. And with that comes the more advanced terminology as well. So it's a matter of time. It has always been a matter of time before everything from SAML drips over to OpenID community, but for good reasons. And don't get me wrong, I think it's the right way that things are happening.
I'm going to give you two SAML jargons, and I want to hear your defense of them.
All right.
User agent was V1, and then artifact would be the other.
Yeah. Oh, user agent, yeah. It's a formal way of saying a browser, right?
Yeah. But do we forget about what's the equivalent of the user agent in OpenID Connect jargon? Do we just say browser or mobile app or client? Like, is there an equivalent in OpenID Connect?
I'm thinking about that. I can't think of it, actually.
Yeah, it's almost like
it
was so important in SAML, and yet somehow does not even need to be mentioned in OpenID Connect at all. Like there's some way the human is doing this in whatever, you know.
But that's the thing. I will not talk bad or anything about everybody involved in OpenID Connect, because there are a huge amount of super clever people.
This is a compliment to OpenID Connect, because
that's what I wanted to say.
Then why then you know, so I guess I'm saying, I'm wondering, it's interesting because at sometimes lately I feel like I've been going back and maybe I want the user agent jargon when we're thinking about agentic AI. Somehow reminding people that there's a user agent in there is really helpful. Like this is an agent running in the browser, like OpenClaw, and so I just find that interesting. And then artifact is one where I think, okay, we can acknowledge that nobody understands, like the word artifact, we're thinking of Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones more than like
I'm still currently working on some artifact binding implementation, and when I talk about it with my colleagues, it's like, it's the code flow in SAML. It's a setting. It's these kind of words. Yeah, you have to understand that 25 or 30 years ago, the world on the internet looked quite different than it does today. Or how old is OAuth? It's also almost 15 years old, isn't it? 10 years?
OAuth 2, we're saying. So when was 6749? 6749. Let's see. I think I want to say 2014. 2012.
Yeah, exactly. So that's almost 15 years old already. So it's also becoming a little bit of a dinosaur. But still, the world on the internet looked different when OAuth was being talked about than when SAML was being talked about. So when people were doing all these XML things and over specifying everything, this is how you would talk about things. So it's maybe another thing is also that SAML is coming from a very corporate world or worldview, and OAuth is coming from the blogosphere, so it's coming from a totally different type of people as well. Maybe that also explains a little bit about why some things stick better than the other, or why things are more easily to understand, because it was way more efficient and effective to just don't talk about the things that you don't need to talk about, not over specifying. Well, I don't know.
You mentioned that that OpenID is, let's say, or OAuth perhaps, is pulling things from SAML. Like SAML's more complete, and OpenID Connect is still pulling features out. But I might argue that actually OpenID and OAuth are quite a bit more complete, because what would you do with a mobile app in SAML? Like there were no mobile apps from
Exactly.
2006, and so. Also, when I put the OAuth working group page, data tracker page, and currently there are, I think, 34. Let me see if I can find it. 32 RFCs, 10 active drafts, 10. I don't know, 6 of these active with the IESG internet, and 10 expired drafts. So, even just like thinking about the 34 RFCs, actually, and OpenID itself is quite a range of specifications these days. I would actually argue that OpenID Connect and OAuth are way more comprehensive, but that there's still a couple of identity things that were done in SAML that haven't really been accomplished yet, or it was like SAML was a ground up rewrite. And whenever you do a ground up rewrite, it takes you a while to just get to where you were. And in some ways we're seeing that. And the one I wanted to bring up was the area of federation. Because you mentioned that you started early in your career, you worked with SurfNet, and the middle school federations. Those are really big and successful federations, which deliver a lot of value. And yet OpenID Connect and OAuth, those federations are probably still SAML today, I'm guessing. And when is OpenID is that even going to happen? Where we're going to see OpenID and OAuth catch up in federation?
I think gradually it will, at least on the edges. I remember, like 10 years ago, maybe I was at some talk with a government organized standardization body type of thing in the Netherlands. They have the policy that if there is a problem and there is a standard for it, then there is that standard is being used to solve the problem, or there is a choice being made for one standard for one problem. And if you want to divert from that as a government institute, then you'd need a very good argument. And the reason is, don't let every government organization invent their own solutions, because you have to learn from each other and then reuse what has been done. And there was also the question: should OpenID Connect be proposed as a standard for federated authentication? Because SAML was already on that list, solving that problem. So it's not exactly the same. The conclusion is that, or my conclusion is that it's got different problem spaces. They are allowed to live next to one another, but if you have invested majorly in solving federated authentication and you are a part of a federation, and you want to spend a whole lot of money to redo the SAML solution with OpenID Connect, then you spent a lot of money to get to the same place where you were. So why would you do that? So I don't think that existing SAML federations always have a good reasons to be replaced by something that is doing the same. On the other hand, if you just need the OpenID Connect or the ID tokens to be able to log in users at new applications, mobile applications, whatnot, or for the whole AI world that's happening right now, you can have on the edge, you can have like the protocol translation things. You take in a SAML assertion and you spit out an ID token, because that should definitely be possible. And I think that could also be a very simple and effective way of being able to support both standards for both type of client application. And also federations. The the education federations, they're super interesting because they are like huge. Every country has its own solution, and then there's the cross-country super federation types of thing where the federations federate with each other. Um, this is really, it's really interesting and cool stuff. But if you want to mess with such a big space, you have to have so many people on the same page that it's almost logistically impossible to make that change or support both. But yeah, then back to my first point: why would you pay twice if you only have a need for one answer or for one solution? So I think it's also a cost and a maintenance thing that SAML will definitely stick in these federation cases. Yeah, I hope that is a little bit of a answer
I,
to what you're asking.
I'm looking up the episode. Alex Weinert, and let's see what episode was he on? 176. He made an observation. Alex was one of the product leaders at Microsoft for a long time. He's now at Semperis with Sarah Cacchetti. And they specialize in Microsoft Active Directory security. And his point was like, I think 90% of enterprises still have Active Directory. And he made a point that new technology comes in, but the old technology never goes away. So you're just adding new stuff to your existing stack. And I think SAML is a perfect example of that. Where they say it has to be 10 times better, but I wonder if we're at a point where maybe AI is going to force this, because the world of SAML is a very static world.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like this sort of digital transformation that is underway right now might actually require the federations to become more agile in how they manage trust.
Yeah. I think that was a question, right?
Yeah.
I think I agree. I think AI is putting everything on sharp, or how do you say it? I don't know exactly how you say it in English, but you have to be on top of the new things that are moving so quickly. And SAML is not in the position to move along with all these new developments. So what is being done for access control to resources for AI, for agents, it is all based on OAuth and OpenID Connect, which is great because it provides the means to in a secure way transfer all identity and authorization related information to APIs. And OAuth, OpenID Connect, they're made for that. So making a big effort to optimize SAML to also do that, kind of think that's a waste of time. I think if you really need to integrate an existing SAML solution with AI, you should translate some of the SAML stuff into OAuth, into access tokens and ID tokens, and make sure to use those instead of SAML assertions. I think that makes your life a lot easier, because then you can tag along with all the new developments that are going on around AI, and nobody wants to miss those. So that would be my advice, at least. But I want to nuance everything that I say as my advice. I'm a technologist, so I'm not a commercial guy. So always think about that when you hear me say about things like that.
I think ultimately we'll see. One of the areas that I feel that these educational federations are going to have to move into is data federation, not just access federation. And when you share data, that data comes with obligations and sometimes with restrictions. We see that all the time with personal data, of course, but even scientific data, you might have the right to use it for this purpose, but not for this other purpose. I think it'll be interesting to see how some of these federations evolve as they take on some of these more complicated, like data federation areas. And in those places, they're just going to need new entities and new sort of constructs in order to describe those. And it won't make any sense to do it in XML.
I totally agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna blow up the messages even more, and nobody will understand them anymore.
Yeah. And so, one question that you sort of raised a little bit was, okay, so the standard's very stable. It's been around since 2005. I think there was a revision in 2007, like some errata or something. But could they even change SAML if they wanted to? Like, are there enough people around in the SAML OASIS working group where if something urgent came up that they needed to be addressed, could they update it even? Do you have any idea?
I,
Is it
I,
just what it
I
is?
have, I have no idea. I really have no idea. No, I cannot answer that. If there's a good reason, you will always find the people to be able to do that. But no, not sure.
Yeah,
And
it's not like it's an active group.
I don't think that nobody wants to be honest. I
Yeah.
think everybody is looking at OAuth OpenID Connect to take on these problems and leave SAML just to do what it has been made for in the beginning, which it is doing quite stably and nicely.
Um, So you mentioned that that we keep picking stuff out of SAML, right? And bringing it
Yeah.
into OAuth. Are there any recent examples of that stand out in your mind? Of we're like, oh, they finally got this thing that we figured out, 15 years ago.
Uh, no, well, I don't know what recent things, but maybe like a holder of key stuff, which is actually not in the core SAML spec, but it's also a profile on top of SAML.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the proof of possession of a secret key of a private key that you put into the assertion. So anybody who receives an assertion is able to verify whether the sender of the assertion is actually in possession of the private key. So some of that stuff has also been in a profile or in a separate specification in OAuth with the Depop specification. Right. It's not exactly the same solution, but it is at least binding some asymmetric cryptography to tokens.
I have a suggestion.
I'm sorry?
What about CMID, the client metadata identity document? In SAML, it's customary for a SAML SP, let's say the shibboleth SP, to have a /shibboleth page where you get the XML metadata for the SP, and then the IDP can take that metadata and parse it automatically. Is CMID? I don't know. Have you read that spec? Client metadata.
We recently implemented that, and that was exactly my thought as well. This is like federation stuff, right? So you just take a unknown client ID that is represented in the form of a URL, so you can actually resolve documents based on the client ID that is provided without knowing it, and then you fetch it metadata. This is exactly like you say. This is the SAML way of doing things. You can take it a step further and figure out if you want to trust things or not based on domains or based on. I think there was no. It's not a signed document that you get, right? But you could actually argue that could also be added on top of that. So then you do get into
CMID document. You mean?
Yeah. I think it's just a plain JSON thing, right?
Could contain a link to the JWKS URI, because a part of the goal, I thought, of CMID was to be able to attest your public keys.
Yeah, makes sense. But the whole idea is also that it should be from HTTPS sources, which then also offer the TLS layer of security and identification of where you're pulling things from. So that is.
That's a really good question, actually. In OpenID Connect, they specifically say the TLS is required.
Yes,
Like
yes.
this
It
doesn't work
relies on the
without.
security of TLS, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, does SAML do the same thing? Does SAML say, or does SAML say maybe you could run this over HTTP?
Um, I think it's also SAML is coming from a different time where HTTPS was definitely recommended, but not so
Right.
well used as it is today. But I do know from some of my shibboleth experiences how TLS is actually playing a very important role because you
Sure.
can have the client certificate mutual TLS authentication replace the signatures actually,
Hmm.
which make a lot of sense because it is the same kind of way, although you're kind of integrating like the transport and the application layer or seeing SAML as transport or seeing
Yeah.
TLS as application. But it's clever. It's
To
good.
be fair, I never saw an IDP deployment without HTTPS. It's unheard of.
No, no, but
The only place I did run into it, actually, I would say, would be in the distribution of certificate revocation lists. There's a
mhm.
protocol called OSPS or
OCSP, you mean, right?
OCSP. Thank you.
Yeah.
And in that protocol, there's no TLS required. Um, but um, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. So, but yeah, we're assuming TLS everywhere. I think in OAuth and but you're
And
right, and we can do some. Well, these university guys who invented it, they were perfectly comfortable with CAs and Apache servers and roots of trust, and
yeah.
so
XML and directory service. It's like it's that technology that is super old, but it has proven itself to be to be solving problems. So they have been sticking around for a while. But if you get
and you
into the
mentioned you
PKI,
were part of smart cards, right? So
yeah, I just
that's
love this.
basically the your infrastructure. Um, so is there anything that you miss that's in SAML that's not an OpenID connector or OAuth yet, or have they gotten everything?
Cool. So I'm European, so I tend to like privacy. um, and the thing that I know with the education federations is that you never give away the subject. You always use pseudonyms. OpenID Connect has room for that. So OAuth doesn't. When OAuth provides you with a subject, it is a subject, and you have to make your own rules around it. It's not specified. OpenID Connect gives you the opportunity to have like pairwise subject identifiers, which means that every client gets a different pseudonym for the same user. SAML has that, which in SAML is called like a persistent name ID identifier. But SAML goes further than that. They also have like the transient name IDs. They are really like for sticking a session or
Mhm.
binding a user to a session. And that level of privacy or that level of use for authentication, that never made it into OpenID Connect, and probably because there are not so many problems that need to be solved with that. So maybe at some point it will be there. Maybe if it's not needed, it will never show up, and then it's for a good reason that it's not in there because it's only confusing. But that could be like an example or answer to your question. Um, Other than that, I'm not entirely sure. I think also when it comes to federation, I haven't been looking at the OpenID Federation spec for a while, but I can only imagine that it really is a lot like what SAML is doing because the problem is the same, right? So things from SAML will move into OpenID Connect to find the same-ish place and solve the same-ish problem. Yeah.
I would actually like to have a Fed to. I have never done a Federation episode, um, so I hear that spec is getting going final now. Um,
It's been around for a while, so it would be nice to have that landed and become stable. I think.
I heard Leif Johansson saying though that okay, great, this is stable, and now let's immediately start on a 2.0 by breaking, not by really changing the 1.0 standard, but by breaking it into 3 different parts, because the 1.0 standard is just so huge, that it can actually be broken into different pieces. And so on the one hand, I mean, you see, the first thing you said was, is it stable? And the next thing I said was, and there's a 2.0 like planned.
Yeah.
And but on the other hand, I think we still are in a place where there's like proof of concept interops going on, but there's like SAML has like dozens or maybe even hundreds of in production federations with real value going across. So
Yeah.
I don't know. On the other hand, I have to say, I think that companies and ecosystems getting better at collaborating and finding more efficient trust management is really like a big missing part of the agentic challenge. A lot of the risk is like we are very bad at resolving third-party risk. And federation is fundamentally about software crossing trust boundaries and accessing data. And so, so weirdly, maybe we're focusing too much on the authentication part and not enough on the trust part. And I feel like in SAML land, like the trust part was maybe more front and center. And then it's almost like it got taken for granted a little bit in the OAuth part, in the OAuth community. Do you feel that is that way too?
Yes, I think I can agree with you, and I think it is coming from something that I mentioned before, is that SAML is coming from an enterprise world, and it came into play to solve enterprise problems, and also being used, especially in federations, for these inter-organization trust problems, to solve those. Whereas OAuth, OpenID Connect, they come from a completely different world. They found their way into the enterprise world because of what they can accomplish. But it wasn't the first problem to solve, the enterprise problem. And in the enterprise problem, trust is way more valuable than for just a blog. And I'm not putting enough weight on the value of just a blog, but it's just different. It has different value, and it has different requirements there. So I think the background of each of these standards is defining a little bit of what the focus was from the beginning, and how they have been developing. So yeah, that's my take on it.
So you survived your first Identerati Office Hours. The pigeons are flying.
Nice.
Before we break, any other summaries or security happenings or anything else that's going on?
Well, for one, SAML is here to stay, and it will stay. With Curity, we are trying to solve the identity problem, the access problem. Still using SAML, but also, of course, like everybody else, using or having a focus on AI. The world 1 year from now will look completely different when it comes to identity and access management, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But I will never leave SAML behind, because it will always be there.
SAML might never leave us behind, Mark.
Maybe that's a better way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of agree with Alex on, there's still Kerberos out there, man.
So, that's what I skip. But yeah.
Or Radius, in the EduSpace, like EduRoam. You still use EduRoam for like your Wi-Fi access in the university space. Yeah. So Radius is still out there.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So, okay, just a quick reminder, follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. We're trying to get to 2,000 followers, one at a time, basically. So please follow us. The next episode, so this Thursday, I'm speaking at the Linux Foundation MCP Dev Conference in New York. So if you happen to be in New York, we'd love to see you there. So the next episode is a week from today, the intersection of IAM, AI, and Web3. And not something you hear every day. Yes, I said Web3. And that will be with Jeremy Wan. So I'm looking forward to that a week from today. With that, I'll say, Mark, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure to get to visit with you. And thank you, audience, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mike.